Hello, and welcome to today's webinar sponsored by TrenData on the ROI of People Analytics. I just wanted to start with a brief overview of what we're going to cover in the webinar today. I wanted to give everybody on the call just a brief overview of who TrenData is. And then I always like to start out presentations with a little industry data as to what's going on with workforces on a national or global level, so people can kind of compare as to what's going on within their own organizations. And then we'll step through what you actually can do to actually measure the ROI of workforce and people decisions that you make and try and implement. Then we'll kind of transition from that into how technology or a software solution can assist on that, and move into a demonstration of the TrenData People Analytics solution applying some of these principles. I have everybody on mute right now, so if you have any questions, if you could chat them into Steve Parda. He's on the meeting and an associate of mine who is working this in addition to me. And then we'll talk about, if anybody's interested, ways you can take a look at the TrenData solution at no charge. So just briefly, who is TrenData? We are a cloud-based solution. We provide organizations the ability to generate advanced and predictive analytics. We do this by bringing together all of your HR and financial data sources to produce metrics, which can then be trended into analytics for both historical and future projections on where you're going with such things as turnover, recruiting, absenteeism, and things like that. We're headquartered in Plano, Texas. If you can tell by the map right there, that's just a little bit north of Dallas. We're going through kind of a hot spell right now. We topped out at about 108 a few days ago, but we've had something like 2 to 3 weeks of consistent 3-degree weather. So if 3-digit temperature. So if you're think it's hot where you are, I think only Arizona usually tends to top us during the year. The company TrenData was founded actually by myself, Tom McKeown. I'm the CEO. And Mon Hamden, who is the chair of our advisory board, he actually founded a very successful talent management company called HR Smart, which sold to a larger software company, Deltek, a few years ago. As a matter of fact, most of our senior executive team are former HR Smart employees. So we have a very long-standing expertise in the HR and HR software arena. That's just a little sampling of some of our clients. We are pretty well represented across industries. So if you're looking at doing something with a TrenData solution, we can always provide you references as to people that are successfully using it. So as I said, I always like to start out with a little data, give an update on how the industry is looking. So the first one always people are interested in is turnover and how that's trending. I follow a group called CompData, which does some very extensive surveying into certain HR areas, and turnover is one they follow very closely. They break it down actually by industry and a lot of other specifics. So their latest data, which they produced for the year of 2017, they wanted to show the trend going back to as far as 2013. The blue part of the graph is actually voluntary turnover. That's people who leave the company of their own volition, whereas the red is people that the company lets go. And as you can see, with the labor force getting much tighter and the economy, as it's been improving the last couple of years, the amount of voluntary turnover has gone up by about 50%, whereas actually the involuntary turnover has shrunk. Means probably since they're losing a lot of their best people, companies are forced to keep some lesser players in place because it's been so difficult to keep their high performers. So definitely the track of a tight labor market is increase in voluntary turnover. You can also see how that affects in the area of recruiting. This is some data that we got from SHRM, another organization we follow very closely. A couple of metrics that they have, one talking about the actual cost to hire somebody. Now it's interesting, so you can see from 2016 to 2017, the cost per hire, and it's really the non-labor cost to hire somebody. That's strictly the cost of software that's used and other things such as background checks and whatever that are used to bring someone on board has increased about $300 just in the last year, which is about an 8% increase. And it's interesting to note that has been accompanied by a shorter time to fill open positions. A lot of this is due to the fact, again, it's a lot more costly because the labor pool is so tight, and companies are actually closing quicker, possibly even skipping steps in their recruiting process to not let a good candidate get away. And candidates have been emboldened by this as well, are coming in with multiple offers and often pitching that to employers. So it's not surprising, again, in a tight labor market to see this these type of trends. And this one we haven't looked at quite as much, and particularly at TrenData, we're starting to get more inquiries on the effects of absenteeism on company bottom lines. And this is strictly unplanned days off, so it doesn't count vacations. What this is when people call in and they were expected to come in and didn't come in, whether it's sickness or something else. It's not quite as bad as you might think, particularly as you look. The bulk of the area is employees that have taken less than 5 days, sick days in a year. The national average, I think, by the Bureau of Labor Statistics is about 2.8 6 days per year. And it also kind of dispels a little of the myth that younger employees are taking much more time off than older employees. If you group the up to 5 days and the 0 days together, you can see it's probably about even. And then it's a smaller percentage as you get beyond. But if you look at more than 10 days, 16% could be considered pretty high. But these are some good statistics because we'll talk a little bit about assigning dollar values to these and how that can actually give you some ideas on how you could possibly improve workforce productivity. So when demonstrating ROI, it's first I want to just kind of define the process of determining people analytics, because it's like what we always talk about is that software is an automation of a manual process. So being able to just put a process in place or knowing what the process is the place to start. Then you can go and define more specifically, what are the problems you're facing in your organization? Is it one of the three that I discussed? Turnover, recruiting, absenteeism? Could it be something else? And finding a way to quantify that in dollars. I mean, we all know that a high turnover rate of high performers is not good, but when you go to your CFO and tell them you need to get resources, whether it's software or recruiters or more other things that can keep people on board, you have to be able to present it in their language, which is in dollars and cents or whatever currency you might be using. Then we'll talk a little bit about establishing success thresholds where, what is your goal? Do you want to eliminate turnover? Maybe not, but you definitely want to drive down high performer turnover as much as possible. And then we'll also talk a little bit about external threats and how you can plan for those in your predictive scenarios moving forward. Then, as I mentioned, we'll talk about technology applying at all of these. So let's talk a little about what is people analytics. And I alluded to it a little bit in the introduction of what TrenData does. People analytics start with metrics. Metrics, we always like to say, are a snapshot in time. It's how things are right now. So no doubt you might have a dashboard through whatever software vendor you use or one that you manually put together in Excel or something that measures things like turnover, cost of hire, average salary, or they might be disparate, which is very common in various different applications. But the first step is to establish these metrics. The second step is to then trend them over time. So to see, whatever it is today, has it been getting better, getting worse? Is it demonstrating seasonality as you go back a year, 2 years, 5 years? What that does is then gives you intelligence and the ability to then interpret those by using regression analysis and employee scoring to then be able to formulate and build predictive scenarios. Well, there's a 78% chance that someone who is at this tenure, has these skills, and is being paid this much, that they're a 78% flight risk. So then you measure all your 78% flight risk, and it gives you an idea of where you're going in the future, as well as using that regression analysis, which just projects the trend out into the future. Now, of course, it's not useful to just have this at a total top line. What you need to be able to do then is drill down at every one of these phases. So, for example, if you use turnover, you might have a 6% global turnover of your organization, but it might be 2% everywhere and 30% in Europe. And then when you go to your prescription to solve the turnover, you might just really want to target it at that one area rather than going with a solution that hits every other department and geography. So when you're defining the problems, first thing is, what are your major workforce issues? Is turnover a problem? Is recruiting a problem? Is absenteeism a problem? Imagine to talk to any of you, you probably have problems, at least in the first two, as I point out with those strains, whether absenteeism is or not. But the first thing is, what are the major issues? Identify them. And then kind of drill down and see if you can identify what the drivers are. Are people leaving because of competition out there? People offering better compensation? Do they want a better career work life? Are they not getting the development they need? Recruiting, again, is very tough because it's very competitive out there. Do you have enough recruiters on staff that are able to contact enough people? Are you providing the training, and do you know the right sources to go to get the best people? And absenteeism could be a number of things. It could be people generally are sick, or they just might not be engaged at work. Or, in a tight market, they might be taking a day off to go job searching. And as we're in the thick of summer right here, you can imagine if you're living in a coastal area and you're near a beach, someone might call in sick on a Friday or a Monday for obvious reasons. I occasionally like to put trivia questions inside my presentation. So for some of you who are from the baby boomer generation like myself, we talk about morale and stuff like that. So there's a picture over on the side, and we were offering a $25 gift certificate to anybody who can identify that person either by character name or the actor's name. First person, and you have to chat it to Steve Parda, who's on the call here today. So just a little fun we like to have during our webinars. So once you've defined what your areas that you're looking at and the drivers, the next step is then how do you assign value to them? Okay, again, like I said, turnover of high performers is definitely a problem. But again, how do you talk the CFO's language when you're pitching that you need some kind of resource, again, software solution, people, or whatever, to combat the problem? So let's start with turnover. You can start with the average salary of an employee, and there's a lot of studies out there. Burson and Associates does a lot on the cost it is to replace an employee. They say on average it's about 1.5 to 2x, whereas high performers are about 4 to 8x. So that's kind of a sort of a fictional one, not a fictional one, a theoretical one that you can use to apply. But you can also calculate just revenue per employee in your population. If you're able to take a system that just you know how much your revenues are, whether it's monthly or rolling 12, divided by the number of employees, it gives you an idea, or at least a baseline to start, as to what losing an employee might cost you. And then if you do a little breakdown, again, with the high performers using some kind of stat, you got a good idea that you can start calculating value in turnover. Cost per hire is a little more simple. As I said, I pointed out that SHRM says the national average right now is $4,425. But again, if you can group together all of your expenses for hiring on a month-by-month basis, divided by the number of new hires, it's very easy for you to calculate the cost of hire within your own organization. And again, be able to demonstrate that, I need more staffing people, or I need an applicant tracking system or a people analytics solution to help me combat this problem. Absenteeism, again, I always like, as I say, provide some sources. There's a group called Circadian, another research group, that says that the average per salaried person cost of in a year for taking days off is $2,650, and it's actually more for hourly employees, about $3,600. Again, you can get to this same figure using your own numbers if you know the revenue per employee, and you can calculate what a day of work counts. That gives you, again, a pretty good figure. What it doesn't take into account is possibly, all of the juggling it takes when someone doesn't come in to get someone to fill their role and what they take away from another role. So this figure could be a lot higher, but this is a good way to start out if you're trying to assign dollar values to some serious workforce problems that you're trying to address. So again, you can talk the finance language. And then as you go through and do the math, you can see it adds up to some pretty big numbers. So even if we just took, replacing an employee to be 1x their salary, if you're a 3,000 person company and you're witnessing the national average of the 18.5%, that would come out to $41 million in lost revenue due to just a turnover alone. You type in the recruiting part. So if you're looking to grow your organization 20%, you take into fact that turnover of 18.5%. So now you're looking to grow really 38.5% in the amount of people you got to bring on board. And then all of a sudden, that you're looking at recruiting 1,155 people for a 3,000 person company. It's almost a third of your workforce. And even if you just take that cost per hire figure, that's another $5 million you're looking at in lost value due to growth and turnover. And then finally, just taking the absenteeism, if we took those figures, salary and hourly, and even if you just take the average of the two, which is somewhere around $3,100 a year times the number of employees, you're looking at almost $10 million in loss due to just being part of a 3,000 person company. So the higher you go, you can see how those numbers can really escalate. So being able to track these various areas of your workforce at least can at the start allow you to identify some pretty big costs your company is incurring and what you can do to fix them. So, a couple of things that, often when we're doing predictive models for clients that that they like to try at first. First of all, if you're looking for a near-term solution, often clients want to throw money at things at first and to see what that affects. So, for example, if by chance you can reduce turnover by 2% from that 18.5, you're looking at saving $5.5 million if you could just reduce by 2%. Even if you looked at giving a bonus or a raise to your employees, if you think you could get that amount of return on it, maybe half of it you would spend in incenting employees. That might be a quick-term fix, and a long-term fix, you might be looking at things more like, as we talked about, is it a question of people are leaving because of the culture? Are they leaving because they have, adolescent kids at home and they need to take more time than they thought? Or is it you're recruiting people who don't want to be in the same job for 8 years and they want to be able to advance, and they look for the company both to help train them and also to provide career paths? So there's a lot of different areas that this can go in, and particularly if you're a company that's growing and you're looking at 20 to 30% growth in a year, you're going to want to train and move your high performing employees up to hopefully become leaders or individuals of more responsibility going forward. So it's often a point to identify these things, but also to look at where you want to get to and set a goal. Because that's one thing, again, when you're talking with finance people is, okay, well, if I give you this, where are you going to get to? So setting a threshold, success threshold, is very important to be able to come back and say, hey, look, we did this, it achieved this, saved the company, or maybe even made the company an additional couple of $1 million. It's also important to be able to identify external threats, particularly in the predictive scenario where you're looking at down the road. A lot of businesses, for example, are dependent on some things the government might do. If you have a large government contracting business, or you're something that could be tariffs, it could be healthcare. Could be a lot of things where you know that something the government might do might affect your business. You want to be able to build that into your models. And again, I'll offer another $25 gift certificate if anybody can identify this movie to Steve Parda. But going forward, innovation comes in many different forms. Of course, I'm in the technology business, and we're also often looking at new standards being set and new ways of doing things that could affect business. In the healthcare or pharmaceutical business, you could look at a new drug coming available, and also possibly a new drug that has gone through the 5-year period where it can now be commoditized. So a lot of good things that you can point out there. And also keeping an eye on the demographics of your organization. People still want to retire at some point, and as you can keep looking forward, notice, particularly as we go forward to years 2020, 25, the amount of people over 65 is going to increase a lot in the next 10 to 15 years. So being able to take into account people retiring, and also focusing in on who's going to replace them, and succession plans and such. So a lot of things externally that you also want to keep an eye on as you're building out your models. And when you look at it, even if you're just able to attach an act to a trend in the past, for example, your healthcare costs might have gone up when the Affordable Care Act passed a couple of years ago. Last time there was a recession in 2009, 2010, it might have pushed some of your indicators down. So if you're looking at economic forecasts and it says something like that out in the future, you want to make sure that you build these into your model so that you don't get caught unawares. So how can technology help in this, having a solution? The right out of the gate advantage is it visualizes the problem. It's one thing to print out a 40-page spreadsheet or report that shows you, everybody's individual stats and everything, but it's quite another to be able to look just, at a single image and see, wow, my turnover is here. I'm paying my people below industry standard. I got people taking a lot of days off, and my revenue employee is not much higher than my average salary. So these are things that just right off the bat, you can look at in a system that can visualize these for you and start to get some ideas, first of all, where those problems are. It can also help you drill down on the outliers where you can say, turnover is this level, but again, it's only here where I have a real problem. Aligning events to trends, we'll talk a little bit about that. And then probably the most exciting part is the modeling, being able to build out scenarios where you can then say, well, if I do this, will this go down? Or if I do this, will this go up? And things like that. So at this point, I'm going to jump out of the presentation and go into a short demonstration of the system. Now, we talked at the very beginning that what we're able to do at TrenData is bring in data from multiple data sources. And that can be a combination of HRIS systems. It could be your applicant tracking system, whatever. And you also might have legacy data. We use what's called our TUF, the TrenData Universal File Format, that will allow you to bring in a set of data points from. You can just run a report from your. You can just run a report from your HRIS system or something and get as many of these fields as you can. And you can actually run the system that way to start off. But eventually what you want to get to is the ability to bring in data from, directly from your system so that you can have real-time upset. So for example, in this scenario, we might go in and link into our Workday system and click on that connection. And what that'll do is then pull in all of the data that we've pre-specified that we want to populate the system, at which point now I will have all of those metrics, similar to those fields that I had in the TUF, now in the system. So I'll go to my main dashboard and start to build it out. I've got 4 folders over to the left here, which have kind of siloed all the information. We've got recruiting data, financial data, and you'll notice there's a few zeros, which we'll talk about in a second, talent data, and then kind of a catch-all for overall organizational data. Now, you might want to start off and just put some top-line metrics in, such as number of employees. You might want to put in where you're getting most of your hires from. But there might be some more drill down statistics that you might want to bring in that you're not quite sure how to get to. TrenData employs a really advanced natural language processing system so that you can basically search through the whole system, drill downs, do filters, all through just a Google-like command. So for example, if I was looking, wanted to find compensation versus industry averages, I could just type that in, and what it's going to do is go to that particular view and show me, okay, by job level, here are all the compensation I'm paying my employees in these various areas versus the averages. As I can see, I'm paying above in most and close to even on everything, but I want to keep a watch on that on a regular basis. So I'm going to add that to my dashboard and put it out there. I might also want to look at, where do my employees work? Are they close to work? Are they far away? That might be something that I might want to keep track of to know, why people aren't coming to work or maybe why they're getting late. So for example, I might want to go and say, see what are all my employees by commute distance. And this is actually a nice feature because this isn't a metric that the system has built in. What it is it goes out and uses Google Maps and calculates the home and work address and gives you the ability to find your employees as to where they are versus the location they're going to. So as you can see, the majority of my employees are over 20 miles away from work. So again, this might be something I might want to keep a look at, and I'll just save that to the dashboard as well. I also might want to keep a look at some trending information. So what I'll do is go into looking again at my turnover. So the turnover right now is about 4.3% per month. If I went to the analytics for that, I can then go, and what it's going to do is show the trending the last couple of months. You can see the turnover has been on the rise, and I can look at this in a couple of different views, for example, and see, is it voluntary or involuntary? A lot of it is involuntary. That's really what's been on the rise. And what again was it? Performers, high performers, low performers? I can look at that as well and see, well, something really happened here because most of my turnover was non-high performers till January, and then high performers started to go on the rise. I can look at that with an events overlay to see if anything happened during that time period. And if I click on the overlay, I can see, well, right about here, we acquired a company. So, of course, we had to let a few people go as there was duplication of effort. But then high performers started leaving. Possibly it was due to a new level of management that came in and kind of blocked some of the career progression. There might be some things here that we might want to take a look at. But again, this might be something I want to see all the time when I log in. So I can add that to my dashboard as well. So I'll go ahead and do that. And just look at that and add that to the dashboard. And so now I've kind of built out my dashboard, and I might want to add a few other things to it. Maybe just some top line performance score information. Now what I talked about a little bit earlier was assigning numbers to these various areas. So for example, I might want to go and find out, okay, so let's go back to the financial. Right now I don't have any revenue per employee because the Workday system I have doesn't bring in revenues. I can either build an integration that brings that in, or we provide an easy way in the TrenData system. For example, you can just input either your your trailing 12 or individual monthly revenue figures each month, and that will then allow you to create a revenue per employee. It's just basically going to divide that by your number of employees. There's also the hiring costs. So again, if you want to group your applicant tracking, your other costs, background checks, assessment checks, you will be able to do that. So you put them all into one cost, and if you want to put it right here, you'd be able to type it in here. Same thing for benefits if you wanted to do that to establish things. And once you save all these, it's going to go back out, and now you'll see as I go back to my dashboard, as into my financial box, I now have a revenue per employee statistic. So I might want to put that on the main dashboard. And I might also want to put that cost per hire on the main dashboard. So now I've got some hard numbers then to go out and do some calculations as I move out and show some statistics. Now I'm going to look at the two areas, particularly in recruiting and turnover. So let's start and take a look at recruiting. So right now this shows me I get the majority of my candidate hires every month, from, or at least in the last month, from job boards. I can go to analytics in this, and what it's going to show me is that a persistent trend? And as you can see, with it being highlighted in green, it looks like, yes, on a regular basis, I do get the majority of my new hires from job boards. I can look at that in numbers. I can look at it in percentage, however you want to look at it. And I can also go back in time to see if that's a historical trend. So if I go back 5 years, is that what I've been looking at? Yes, in fact, I do get most of my hires from job boards. So does that mean I want to target more money at job boards to get future candidates? Well, also being able to filter by some of these other drivers and metrics, you can look at also over a time span something like performance. So if you're on a 1 to 5 performance scale, suppose you wanted to just look over those 5 years where you were getting your top performers from, people who scored a 4 or a 5 on your performance reviews. And as you can see now, the picture changes quite a bit. Job boards has sunk a little bit, and it is LinkedIn and to some extent employee referrals, which are getting your best employees. So that's maybe an area where you want to say, well, maybe I should target a little bit more towards that because they're getting my best employees, not necessarily my my greatest numbers. So let's go back and do one more thing. So I want to go, this was the idea we really want to do, is show you the really dollars to the predictive modeling. So let's go back to the turnover metric. So if I go in and look at the analytics again of turnover, I can definitely see that turnover has been on the rise for the last couple of last year at least. I can also go back in time again and take a look at some older data if I have it in the system to see if in prior years I've had various flips in turnover as well. And maybe use that intelligence to go out and look at a future view. So for example, if I move to a predictive view going forward, I can see that turnover is going to continue to climb based on the current climate and top out at about 5.6% a month, which is a very probably unhealthy turnover rate for most organizations. And it'll kind of plateau there, maybe going down a little, but pretty much staying there based on our analysis. So what can I do? So right now I've been looking at a view by individual who's been in the various scenarios. But if I go to a summary view, it brings up a lot of nice numbers that help me analyze various things. So for example, it's showing right here that I'm losing a large amount of productivity by turnover, and as well as a very high amount of high performer turnover. Even almost twice that of the overall turnover and non-high performer turnover. So let's do a little modeling to see, based on our scoring and historical, what can I do to change this? So if I start doing the modeling, you'll see it kind of lights up 3 areas that I can change that can have an effect on this future scenarios. One is I can go and give everybody a raise in salary. 2, I can let people work from home, or I could put more people in training. So let's look at each of these scenarios. So right now it looks like I'm paying pretty well, and I think in that first metric I showed, we're at about in the industry average or above in most of those areas. So with my turnover projected to be 5.6% in July, what would happen if I gave a $5,000 raise across the board? That only brought turnover down about 5.4%. Really didn't even do anything to the high performer turnover. So a 1,000-person company, I just spent $5,000 per employee. I just threw away $5 million, not threw away, but spent $5 million and really didn't get the return I was looking for. So maybe we won't do that right off the bat. I can also see that the company has a rather generous work from home policy. And we have over a third of our employees working from home. What if I went and maybe increase that another 10%, made that 45%? Okay, so that does seem to start to drive turnover down at a decent rate, but it hasn't had as big effect on the high performers. And if I go visualize this on my graph and look at it by performance, I can see that the high performer, even though it's trending down a little with everybody else, is still at about double what the overall turnover rate is. I might want to keep that because maybe I've determined that letting people work from home doesn't cost too much. But if I go to that third metric, I can see particularly high performers, even though I have professional development plans in place, whether it's management or whoever, very few people are in these programs, less than 7% of my high performers. So what if I were to increase that to, say, 15%? And this is using our artificial intelligence engine to drive all of this. Once I put that suggestion in, you can see that the system recommends, yeah, that's a good thing to do. Keep increasing it. And now you can see that my high performer turnover is now really going down at a rate even less than the non-high performer turnover and overall turnover. So if I were going to spend money based on this historical and projective modeling, I probably wouldn't throw it into raises. I would probably throw it into mostly into providing professional development for my high performers. And you can also look at this in terms of productivity and other areas as to what I can present it to my CFOs as something that is a real benefit to the organization. And these models, we can build them out for anything. They could be for tenure, they can be for recruiting, they could be for absenteeism. And the very fact that we can assign numbers to these things makes them really beneficial for being able to predict and plead a case for resources to address a problem. So that's just a quick overview. I'm going to go back to my slides at this point. And I think I saw some activity on the chat. We have, first of all, I got a question along the lines of how many data sources can you bring information in from? Yes, I only showed bringing in one, but you can bring in any combination of data sources. So for example, if you had, all your HRIS, might just have your people data, whereas you might have iCIMS or Taleo or somebody where you have all your recruiting data. You bring those in you can bring those in multiple feeds, and the system would aggregate them very easily. So it's very easy to use multiple data sources, and there are no limits on how many sources you can bring in. Got another question on benchmark data. So the question is, does TrenData provide benchmarking data similar to some of the information I showed in the webinar? We do provide some benchmark data. A lot of it's freely available out on the web, and we'll bring it together for things like industry salary metrics to apply against turnover and some of the others. There is a lot of free information out there. SHRM does a system that they have some that's free, and then you can buy a report from them. And then if you have a benchmark data from salary.com or some other source, we can import it into the system as easy as any other data feed. So good question. How do you measure absenteeism when you have a PTO and it's not 6 days versus vacation days? At that point, you probably have to do an average to try and figure out, is there, a greater amount of sick days, and you probably have to get then some industry data if you can't break it out within your system. So that might require some kind of an average. Also got where did I pull the industry average salaries from here? Well, we used salary.com for this particular demonstration. That's a good source. Mercer, some of the others have them. So pretty easy to get some, but we were actually using salary.com data. But if you were to move forward with a TrenData solution, as I said, we do have we could pull in industry data from you from open sources that would be very easy that you could use, and then you could decide maybe later if you wanted to go out and buy a service. But there's pretty good data out there for really no cost at all. So Any other questions? Okay, well, it looks like we had a winner in each category, but I will go ahead and, oh, actually, I'll do that later. But I just wanted to point out quickly that we do offer a 30-day trial for our system, and anybody who's interested in using that trial, we can sign you up. It comes with free support, doesn't require a contract. And sorry, there was a mess up in my data here. But we were doing a 90-day countdown to how long we were offering the 30-day trial. So right now it will actually end at the end of this month, where we're offering this 30-day trial. So there's no charge to you. You don't have to sign a contract, and we provide the same type of support we would provide as if you're an actual customer. So if you would, if you're interested in the trial, just send an email to marketing@TrenData.com. And you don't have to, but if you use this promotional code, the TD7-2018, we'll know that it came from this webinar. So finally, I'll give you the answers to the trivia. If you're a MASH fan like I was back in the 70s and 80s, that was the infamous Frank Burns, played by Larry Linville, who I circled. And it looks like someone got the other one. So the movie was a 1993 movie, Dave, where a common lookalike guy became president. So I think if I check the text that Steve sent over to me, Lori Nelson, you won the first one, and Andres Cortolo, you won the second one. So congratulations to both of you. That's pretty much it for our webinar today. I'd like to thank you all for your time. A recording of this webinar will be available on our website probably in about 4 or 5 days. I would encourage any of you to go to our website and see the other recordings. We do 2 webinars a month generally, and we do record them all, and they're freely available. If you go to the website and just click, you can watch it within your browser very easily and go from there. The email, so someone asked again, the email for the 30-day trial is marketing@TrenData.com. Okay, just make sure that you were able to get that. All right. Well, thank you again, everybody, for your time. I hope you're enjoying your summer, and I really appreciate you taking 45 minutes out of your day to spend it with myself and TrenData. And hopefully we'll be able to talk again sometime, either whether it's at a future webinar, if you're interested in taking advantage of the TrenData trial or becoming a customer. Thank you again for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.